show of hands, who knows about Resonate? Oh, okay, wow. Excellent. Yeah, I kind of wish I also had a SoundCloud shirt on tonight.
You're not getting
or a
mine.
Spotify shirt. I do have a Berlin Invaders t-shirt. Trent and I did not coordinate this at the time. But sometimes, you know, I think a lot of us in the room are kind of the Berlin Invaders taking over this town. So yeah, really basically, for those who don't know, Resonate is another streaming service. That's a cooperative, which means that everybody is a co-owner in the service. And we've got a different model called Stream to Own, which is progressive payments. And so that's what we're doing with that. And I would like to share a few thoughts about some recent developments, like as soon as, even just from the last couple of days. But I'd like to start off by kind of tying together some things that have been discussed. And I want to thank you, Eric, for putting together such a comprehensive presentation about the, for lack of a better word, clusterfuck that is.
Thank you. I wasn't even sure if I made sense, so thank you.
Yeah, you really nailed it. I mean, this is, you know, I came into this kind of from a background of being part developer, part musician, wanting to like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do like, you know, the people's uprising kind of attitude, and then slowly discovered how completely messed up everything is. So yeah, you know, you're exactly right about the complexities involved in this system, and I do think that you're right also as well that we are going to see innovation come from the outside, and I'll end with that point in just a minute. But there was somebody spoke earlier, you know, he's maybe gone now, raised a point when George was talking about the possibility of seeing something. The guy didn't say IPFS, but I think he was kind of alluding to it. So for those who don't know, IPFS is Interplanetary File System, and it's sort of Tor on acid in a way. It's like the next generation Tor, which, and I've heard quite a few people ask me the same question, like, you know, isn't it going to be all over in a couple of years when this kind of technology really comes out? And I think that the answer is that if the industry can pull together to create something comprehensive that works for all parties, that what we'll have is something that's absolutely amazing, that provides so much value to everyone that participates in it, that to go over there and like distribute files through this anonymous system, this IPFS Tor and ACID kind of scenario, that it'll be just like a black hole. You'll be falling off a cliff because it won't be connected to all of the amazing value that occurs by participating in this kind of open global blockchain-based system. So I'm very optimistic that we actually are going to get there. And I'd like to throw out a couple of anecdotes from recent experiences. I was in Sonar, Barcelona, and Christoph from SASM gave the number that the collection societies are processing 6 billion lines of data now thanks to streaming. So every time you click play on Spotify or maybe like a major release on SoundCloud or YouTube or whatever, you're generating a line in a spreadsheet, and those spreadsheets are being like emailed. Like, anyone seen them? I've only heard, like, you've seen them. How big? Like they're like hundreds of.
They're tremendous. Yeah, they have to be FTP.
They have to FTP a spreadsheet. It's so big. So this is an example of, like as George mentioned, an industry that's been built on a player piano kind of mentality that's now in the digital age going spreadsheet line, you know, and one after the other.
I have a comment actually.
Yeah.
The initiative for 2017 is to move from FTP to HTTP, which is only 8 years old.
So that's another example of like how far behind certain aspects of the industry are. Another one came from Florian, I forget his last name. He's the president of the new Bundesblock for Germany, the blockchain association lobby group for the government. He said he was in a meeting at, I think, Warner Music, and was talking to the top people, and they hadn't heard blockchain. And I thought, how is this possible? It's like every single music conference you go to for the last 2 years, there's been 2 or 3 different blockchain events, and yet it still hasn't penetrated that far. But like I said, I am optimistic that there's been a kind of move, and like I mentioned Awesome, they're cooperating with ASCAP and PRS and IBM to build something, to start moving this forward. I've also been in conversations with people, having conversations with Gemma, because I haven't dealt directly with Gemma, but they're also like finally starting to look at it. So we're looking at doing some prototypes soon with them. So I think that there is, after maybe like a year and a half ago when there was an incredible amount of resistance, it seems like it's starting to change. And I think it is being driven by that need that's coming from the PROs who, like Christoph said, they're processing 6 billion lines this year and they expect it to double next year. Would you confirm that those sound right?
Well,
those estimations?
It sounds about right.
Yeah. So this old system of processing data just can't keep up. And so blockchain really is the only way forward with that. But it isn't just about like how the legacy industry has to operate. It's about also what can we do in the future. And so I'd like to share some interesting experience that we had earlier this week. Was at Tech Open Air we had Music Hack Day, and we got to do a little hack with the BigchainDB system using Qual IP. Thank you, Alberto, for helping push that through. And what we did was, or what the team did was they took stems files from Native Instruments and did a quick demo of like uploading some files, extracting the metadata, and then publishing them to the BigchainDB system. If you happen to, I don't know, I think they videoed it. They got cut off right at the last second. They had a very short window of presentation time, and just at the last second, it was like when it got published to the blockchain. It was quite exciting. They won second prize, kind of an honorable mention for having done or having tackled something so complicated. But this shows a lot of interest coming from Native Instruments, and I'm really excited about this because this has been one of the common topics that has come up at blockchain discussions in the industry and at conferences and such, is could we get at the point of source? Can we start from where the creators are making music and get them to publish to a blockchain so that they can assert their ownership of that work from the very beginning? And so we're taking that first step forward. We're going to be going to their offices next week to look at the possibility of integrating into their product line in the future. And so I'm really excited about that because this leads to that whole new realm of possibility for music creators. By example, if you produce a completed work, you upload the master, that's just one representation of a piece of music. You then have another opportunity through blockchain systems with smart contracts and licensing and all that, where you could upload the stems for remixing so that apps down the line could take that work and create new versions of it. Or you could break it down into even little bits of loops where maybe some drum loop that Rich Cotton produced could show up in somebody else's track. But finally, through a system like this, you can get attribution. And if he puts in a smart contract saying that he wants a certain amount of money that turns into a commercial, you can get paid. So I'm very hopeful that we're finally going to start to move into seeing kind of projects like this develop, and that combination of innovation to create new opportunities plus the pain that the sort of legacy industry and the things like the PROs are feeling about processing all this data will kind of move us forward in lots of different directions. And then there's the hope of the outliers. And this is the first time in public that I'm going to allude. I'm still not going to say names yet because we haven't finalized details yet. But Resonate is part of a consortium type project with a few other organizations. If you've been following the space, you will know some of those names. But I'm going to have to, out of respect to my colleagues, until we finalize some details, and won't say who they are. But we are working on a consortium type project to build blockchain infrastructure for distribution, smart contracts, licensing, and like that. So it may take quite some time before we're able to interface and integrate with folks like from the majors and all that, and also then make bridges to all of the data that the collection societies have. But I'm very optimistic that we're going to get there. I don't know why I'm out of breath. Talking too fast. So it's kind of late, so I'd like to just kind of keep it short tonight. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can all just get back to beer and pizza if there's any left. So, any questions?
Are there any questions? Yeah.
Thanks for the talk. You said if we get a system that works for all players, can you define this all? Like, who are the players that it has to? Is it just users and artists, or are there some other players that you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's the thing about the industry is that you have all kinds of scenarios. You have extremely direct interactions between artist and fan on local scenes, where that's all it is, and that's all it'll ever be for that community, and that's all that matters. But the all other players includes labels. I mean, I work with lots of indie labels, and they are so essential to culture. They're so essential to the artists that are on those labels that depend on them for the infrastructure that they provide. But then, if you still think about the artist-to-fan relationship, actually, there's still all kinds of stuff that sits in between in terms of the way files get passed around, or messaging or information passes between them, or how fans share to other fans. There's lots of different interactions that occur there. And I do think, I used to kind of have a very sort of rebellious kind of attitude when I got started. I was telling somebody earlier tonight that sometimes I feel like I'm a victim of Star Wars. Because I was 7 years old when I watched Luke blast a portal, the thing, the explosion happened, and it really imprinted on me pretty tremendously. So sometimes I kind of take a look at things and from a what's the Death Star in this scenario. But I think that the longer I've been around with this, the more I've come to see like there's so much more nuance to all of it. So I think that a lot of these legacy organizations that still exist will just perform another role. And like Erik said, they're just going to change. They're going to transform. And really, they're going to do so in the same way that every other industry is going to change and transform when it comes to the way blockchain and machine learning and eventually AI will impact their businesses. So if that answers your questions. Any others?
Well, maybe I misunderstood, but didn't he just say that don't build anything on Ethereum?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so like, how does that fit like with what you
Oh, I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, I don't think you need to put like rights information on Ethereum. You could put smart contracts on Ethereum that describes the relationship between organizations. But from a database point of view and a scalability point of view, that's not the solution.
Yeah, what I meant with that, maybe I was a bit unclear, but what I meant with that is that if you want buy-in from the existing actors in the system or the existing from the existing structure, then you cannot use a system that you don't have control of. You don't need full control, but you cannot put it on a system where you just say, okay, we're putting this information out here, and we have no idea how it will be modified. And of course, I mean, you could say that you can put things on the Ethereum blockchain and say, yeah, this information is here, and I can prove it with my private key. But it doesn't mean that. I mean, then you have to have some sort of a system where you identify the actors in the system. So there is a level of intrinsic anonymity to cryptocurrency blockchains, and that level of anonymity makes, I think, industry acceptance will be very difficult to get if you use that type of system. That's what I was meaning. But that doesn't mean that you can't put other types of information there. Of course, you could use it as some database to put whatever you want.
Yeah, and when it comes to this topic of industry acceptance of identity and such, I really love to comment on something that Alberto said a year ago.
Okay.
What did I say? You talked about blockchain and truth, and that just generally the concept of not being able to reach 100% truth about anything, and that it gave me the idea that you could probably have some kind of a score, similar to like an eBay seller score that would signal the likelihood of truth that this person is who they say they are. And there's a certain level at which this has got to end up being common sense driven. Great example, Discogs. Had a conversation with them a few weeks ago, and the guy I was talking to sent me a link to a release, and it was just, to give the, like your ABBA example, it was like literally 10, 12 lines of variations of 3 writers, and how many different variations had been published over the years of first letter, last name, full first name, full last name, the order in different arrangements. And then he goes, yeah, but did you look at show all? And then it went, and it was like this long, because it was some track that had been released in the 70s, and 3 people wrote this song. And yet, over the years, it's got this many different variations. And common sense is you look at that and you go, that's the same 3 people. It doesn't matter how you arrange it, it's the same 3 people. So I think that when it comes to resolving these IDs, one thing that I really like to see, and I think it needs to happen, especially when you think about the legacy content from the majors going back into history, there needs to be some kind of approach where you can crowdsource data, and the crowd can say, this is really like obvious that this is these 3 people. So I think that's a possibility too.
If I can add something here, I think sometimes it's not about the percentage, but like blockchain can be good at showing, all right, this person said that this person is this person, right? Or these 3 people said that this author made this, and these 3 people or this organization said that this author made this, and just storing this information, which is 100% like sure, we know that this person said this, right?
Yeah.
And then off-chain, anyone making decisions or having systems that can use various kinds of methods to estimate for a given purpose what is the likelihood of this being true actually, right?
Yeah.
And I can totally imagine one system in which like it makes sense to trust these actors, in another system making sure that you can trust these actors. And kind of getting back to what you said about trusting people and identity. Well, I would love to see all this happening still on Ethereum cryptocurrency blockchain, because like you can see, there are startups that are connecting the Ethereum. I'm not sure if Civic does that, but there are startups that actually connect identities, real-world identities with blockchain, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. And you used the term off-chain. You usually use the term system external, which is the same thing, really. And you always, unless you want, when there's money involved, there will be forces that want to subvert this information. And that means if you want to put everything on chain, then it's sensitive to Sybil attacks and these type of ways of trying to subvert the system internally. So then you need. The solution is always to have a system external reputation system where you can say this private key, this public key, yes, we can vouch for that this public key actually belongs to this person.
But then you can still do that with Ethereum.
And a couple of quick comments too, like overall, right? Like a lot of people talk about blockchains as truth machines, and that doesn't really make sense. You can't wave a magic wand and suddenly have truth. Right? But blockchains make excellent claim machines, to what Dominic was saying, right? So that's one really key thing. And just another quick is there are like really great emerging identity solutions where you have an identity in terms of a public key on a blockchain or blockchain database, whether it be IPTV or Ethereum, and then you can actually pin some validated identity to that. For example, at this very meetup, we had Authentic giving a talk 2 or 3 months ago where they have KYC validated identities for a whole bunch of use cases. And then it comes down to like, is the identity validated enough for this use case, right? For this market, et cetera. So
Yeah, just to extend this and quote myself, now that I remember the quote, yeah, the point is that blockchains are really, really good when you have absolute truth in a way, and where the truth is like 1, 0, true, false. But well, I'm coming from the semantic web, where the semantic web actually embraces diversity and conflict in a way, because the semantic web, like the core of the semantic web, is that everyone can create statements, and then we put all the statements together. We have like a reasoning tool on top, and then we decide what is the truth. But the truth, in a way, depends on your point of view, right? I mean, there's not absolute truth in the world. We're humans, not machines. So to combine what you said is that, yeah, blockchains are great, because if you can combine blockchains with some of the semantic web like concepts, you can have a really, really powerful machine at one point, because all these statements are recorded and digitally signed by people. You can add identity to those people, to those public and private keys, public keys, and then you can add on top, even if you have like contradictory claims, you can add on top reasoning and try to understand what is the truth for you. And this is, in my opinion, what the blockchain world should add in a way to the way they frame reality, because it's too mathematical right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, and let's have a reality check. You know, this isn't about like emergency services or, you know, life-threatening conditions. It's about music, and
Music is life.
we can be wrong for a little while and then fix it later. And I think actually, you know, the thing about this being developed from the outside, the opportunity here with that is that if the indie sector can kind of figure this out where nothing's really, you know, critically lost, maybe somebody loses $50 or $100 there because it went to the wrong. Then we work it out, and then all the big earners can you know, benefit from this later by not having their fortunes stolen somehow through identity theft. So, any other last questions?
When iTunes put like songs on, or when Apple put songs on iTunes for the price of whatever a song is on a single of a CD, it kind of felt like the New York Times scanning their newspaper and putting it on their website in the early .com days. And then we had streaming. Now we have blockchain and we're using streaming. So what's the next kind of streaming on blockchain? For blockchain.
Full, total, granular control on behalf of the artist, for them to decide whatever they want to do for whatever makes sense to them.
And what does it mean for the rights then? And like, what's the landscape?
I don't think it has any impact with the rights, because if the artist is in control of their master, then they decide. If they are working with other organizations, then they'll be negotiating on those terms. And then the market will adapt accordingly. But it's about being able to put the power into their hands to make the decisions. Because right now, there's just so many gaps. I mean, I could talk for at least another hour about all the various stories I've been told over the last year about the gaps of data and how there's so much money being lost. And it's not that people are being evil. I mean, some are. Sure, there's some people that are purposely, you know, changing terms and contracts to benefit themselves and not others. But a lot of it's just, it's this player piano bureaucracy that's got to change and got to adapt. There's another one.
A question related to music, but also incorporating lots of other creative people. Do you know if anyone is actually working on creating and defining a file format for VR, AR that actually incorporates that kind of blockchain ideas, not forgetting this kind of massive amount of metadata within the file?
I can't speak to that specifically because I haven't had enough time to dive into that, but hope to soon, because there'll be a lot of opportunity there. Does anyone else want to answer that question? Any other VR, AR experts in the room?
From a licensing construct, because I've done a lot of deals around it, it's being viewed as sort of a synchronization, right? So as a visual component with the underlying composition, and that's what it is. But no, there's no like codec or format specific for VR. They're licensing it in the same way you would license to TV or movie.
Yeah.
Related, actually, the Matrix guys out of San Diego, they're spin up from the University of California, San Diego. They're actually using Koal IP, and it's actually with the VR and AR applications for designing things like aerospace and protein folding and so on. So that's probably the most fully fledged example I've seen. There's others too that are doing sort of like Second Life type stuff, etc. So.
If anyone's watching and you are doing that, please get in touch. Last questions, or should we all just throw back a few more?
I've heard a lot about the musicians getting rights, which is wonderful. What about music fans? Spotify, maybe not so great for musicians, maybe not getting so much, but it's wonderful for music listeners because everything is there all the time. In this blockchain world, can my favorite artist turn off the tap because they don't feel like letting people listen to their stuff that day? Are we moving back to total DRM?
No, I don't think so.
Sure you can. I mean, you can opt out depending on your strength of the contract. Taylor Swift pulled her catalog, and Jay-Z. The window. What's happening now is the windowing.
Does blockchain world allow them total control to reach into my house? And
no, that's a contractual. I mean, if you say, okay, I want my music in the streaming service, there's going to be terms and conditions around it. And if you just turn it off, you'd be in breach.
Oh, but I was wondering though. We're hearing about this granular control and.
Yeah. I think it will open up a lot of opportunities there. I mean, Imogen Heap talks about these kinds of things, and she's thrown out wild examples of like maybe she wants to put out a song that's available only on Thursdays.
Self-solo music.
Yeah, I mean, artists will experiment with this in so many different ways just to do it, or that it'll become fused with their work in ways that we can't even imagine. That's what I think.
And then you can imagine selling the rights for playing the song on Tuesdays or Thursdays to people on open markets. Right? You can see like Thursdays going up, Fridays going down.
Friday I am in love.
It's really important. It's important because, like in the States, one of the big issues was a lot of artists were really aggrieved when political candidates would use their music at rallies. And the licensing terms allowed that. I mean, if you pay a blanket license, you can play whatever you want, no matter what the artist thinks. But to be able to sort of control the rights at a granular level, something like this could do that. You can't play my music in this context. Because the United States doesn't have moral rights, right? We can't sue for that.
Token launch the song.
If I can add a little bit to that, like tokenizing the songs and then just I'm interested in markets a little bit. And for me, that's one of the benefits of doing this whole management on the public chains. That then you can attach that to the markets, and you can really you can see people trading parts of the rights, or I don't know, a publisher selling a part of the rights of the song on the open market, right?
Or prediction markets around who's going to be the next big thing.
Yeah. Well, prediction markets is one thing, but then I can imagine a radio DJ. Buying shares in the song, like it's insider trading of songs, right? But then, or being able to actually, once the markets can play with copyrights in this granular level, a lot of money will flow in there, and once the money flows in, a lot of money will go to the artist, and also once the market is public, more artists will be able to create and build.
And that's exactly why I'm so much more optimistic that by playing inside the system, you're going to have so many more opportunities than going to the new torrent. So I think it's pretty late. Our hosts have been very kind. I think we're over time. Kind of. Generally? Yeah? Sure. Okay, well.
Maybe a flashing light.
I got to get home and see my 3-year-old before she goes to bed. So anyway, thank you so much.